I don't know if you're totally sick of me, but here I am again. I'm Suzanne Titkemeyer. I used to write for Pathos, a column called No Longer Quivering, involving the Quiverfull movement for almost 10 years. Now I'm on my own. I'm doing my own projects and things. I want to start out today. I want to talk today especially about the Baptist religion. Why? Because there's a certain person that's saying that all the Baptists are the same. The problem with the Baptists is they're kind of like sands of grain on the beach. You might have a big formation every now and then, but mostly you have these little clumps of sand. And as many different types of fast food restaurants or whatever it is, pick anything that there's a lot of. The Baptists are not one size fits all. They're all kinds of different things. So I wanted to break it down. This blogger keeps claiming that IBLP-ATI, in other words, Bill Gothard, is Baptist. It's a non-denominational. I got that right off their own website. I knew that, but I just double-checked it. I did a little digging. They are non-denominational. Hey, Laura, they are not connected to the Baptist religion exclusively. The thing with the Baptists is there's this regular Baptist, a lot of people do. There's a Southern Baptist, huge population with the Southern Baptist, regular Baptist. There's the Independent Fundamentalist Baptists, who are very different than the Baptists. They believe in the baptism by spirits and things. They believe in baptism, but they tend to be independent. They reject a lot of the rules of the Baptist church, and they have much stricter, more stringent ones. Hey, Nitwit. So they're all kinds of flavors. It's like anything you can think of. Sodas. Everybody's got their own favorites. There's a million trillion ones. There's two biggies. There's a bunch of little ones. That's how it is with the Baptist church. If you drive through rural West Virginia, or really rural anywhere, you're going to see signs for every kind of a Baptist church denomination you could think of. I remember one time we drove through West Virginia, McDowell County, and I got to see primitive Baptist churches. There were your ancestors' Baptist church. There's your grandfather's Baptist church. There's all these different Baptist church denominations, these little teeny tiny ones. And hey, Ruth, so there's all these denominations. She's trying to claim this is universal, specifically for the rules about spanking. It's not true. It varies from church to church. Some churches don't address it at all. I'm talking about the Baptist today. The Baptist. And there's everything in the Baptist, from your traditional, regular Baptist, all the way to the new Independent Fundamentalist Baptist, which have some of the strictest rules you've ever heard of. They also believe that anybody caught in adultery, anybody that looks at porn, anybody who's gay, anybody who's a feminist, they believe in executing these people. They believe in the death of them, and they pray for the death of them sometimes. So it's not quite as cut and dried as she's trying to say. Some Baptists do follow the IBLP and the ATI, some don't. Again, like I said, like every kind of cola, there's every kind of Baptist. And they're all different. And that was all I wanted to say today. This will be a really quick video. I also wanted to talk about the I Pray You Put This Journal Away podcast. The guy who does that just posted on Reddit. He's getting ready to put up the last few episodes of it on his podcast. And then they're going radio silent. If you don't know, the I Pray You Put This Journal Away podcast is done by a guy who knew Bob Duggar and Josh Duggar. He was raised with the Duggars. He's roughly the same age as some of the Duggar children. He's talked a great deal about Josh and the whole Duggar thing through the last couple of weeks. What's crazy about him is there are a couple of, there's actually one blogger that covers this stuff that won't allow his podcast to be mentioned in any way, shape, or form. She's taken down links to it, even though she's gotten some of her info, some of her more twisted info that she's taken and then turned it from that particular podcast. I recommend you go listen to it yourself. I've listened to it. If you like Josh, if you like to hear more about Quiverfull, as in the type that the Duggars practice, this young man has a lot of information. He's asking right now on Reddit for your questions. So that if you have a question about anything you want answered by him before it goes dark, I would just suggest going over to Reddit, registering for Reddit, and putting down your question. Okay, so hey, Truffles. There was a quote that I just love that somebody put up a little while ago. Everyone should smile. Life really isn't that serious. We make it hard. The sun rises. And I put anyway on the end because it's very true. Depending upon somebody does this or doesn't do this, or they say this or whatever, we are all in this together. It doesn't really make a hill of beans. I'm sorry, I don't know why, but when I talk sometimes I start drooling. I think it has to do with one of the medications I'm on. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that because I'm trying to get away from talking about her, but at the same time, I can't let all this information of hers stand when I know it's wrong. Like I said, there's a Baptist church to fit everybody, every single need and want, desire, whatever. There's a Baptist church for it. And Baptist religion is something that I've had to do quite a bit of research on because I don't know it. I was raised Catholic. The fundamentalist Quiverfull church I went to was not Baptist. We had a lot of Baptist friends, but we were not Baptist. We were non-denominational. Many of the Quiverfull families I've known through the years have been very non-denom. You might go to a Baptist church for a while because that might be the only thing you can find in your area if you're not wanting to do the Church of the Holy Basement and do it at your house. That's what the Duggars used to do. They used to do the Church of the Holy Basement. They kind of are the no fun crew. You can't dance because somebody might think you're making love. Can't play cards because that's demonic because of tarot reading. Yeah, you can't. They have a lot of don'ts. That's one thing I'll say about the Baptists. They have a lot of don'ts. Don't. They tend to be what I always call the secret sin crew. I wish I could remember the old joke, but the punchline was, and Baptists don't recognize each other in the liquor store. I've observed a lot of that. There are a lot of people who are Baptists who follow that religion that seem to only follow it just when everybody's looking, and when nobody's looking, they have their own secretive self. And I can't blame them. Who wants to be in a religion that won't let you play cards or dance? Dancing is a joyful activity. And for silly reasons, like somebody might think you're making love standing up, silly stuff. Truffles, I thought that too. I didn't want to join the Christian church. The first couple of times people gave me, I guess you'd say, come to Jesus's altar calls, because I didn't want to have to wear a polyester dress and put my hair up on my head and be about as fake looking as possible. I just had no desire for that whatsoever. And I couldn't see what difference it would make to Jesus. I said to a sermon today, the guy is International Baptist, I think. I think that was his religion. Whenever they bring the International Baptist guys down from San Jose, I'm just like picking up the cell phone and playing a video game because I just can't handle it. His sermon today was all about secret sin. And there was nothing positive said at all. He said that if you weren't walking in the light of Christ and praising him, if you forgot to praise him, you were damned, and everything you were doing was damned, and you were going to go to hell. So I was sitting there thinking, yeah, buddy, I hope you go to hell for saying such things. They're the definite no fun crowd. And the variations on the no fun crowd depends upon the particular flavor of Baptist. You survived the IFB. I am shocked, Prairie, because I think they're about the most hardcore, except for the new independent fundamentalist Baptist run by Stephen Anderson, since he thinks that regular independent fundamentalist Baptists are not fundamentalist enough. They're not hardcore and calling for the death of people enough. I should do a live stream and pull Bruce Gerenzer in here sometime for you guys to talk to him. He was an independent fundamentalist Baptist minister for like 30 years, some obscenely long period of time before he just totally burned out. And in his burned out nature, he started reading Bart Ehrman books. He ended up becoming an atheist. I just find his journey fascinating. I've talked about that before with him. I've asked him that question, what point was the thread pulled out? Because I was related before the story of how your life in Christ, somebody used this analogy around me. It's like a piece of tapestry. It's all beautiful on top, but underneath, there are a lot of mistakes and things turned around and pulled every which way. And I have said that leaving that kind of denomination is like taking that tapestry that's perfect on top and all funky and weird on the bottom. It's like taking that and pulling out a thread. And if you pull the right thread, the whole thing pretty much unravels and comes apart. I've asked Bruce before, what was the thing that pulled the thread for you? For me, it was the dumbest of the dumb. The first thread got pulled, and a lot of them got pulled. The first thread got pulled when I was told that I had to repent from ever having done yoga. And I had a yoga book by a lady out of PBS that I used to watch all the time, Lilias Yoga. And I opened up her book, and the first page is dedicated to Christ. And she's talked about spiritual practices and Jesus in her book. It was back from the 70s when I first got that book. And I spoke up when we were having that meeting, because we were having a meeting where we were going through this pamphlet. I wish I could find it. I wish I hadn't thrown it out when I moved. It was all about confessing your sins. It forced you to tell all the stuff you'd done. I started asking them, Seuss and Bruce and Ed Travers. That would be awesome. I'm going to have to see if I can set that up. So that was the first thread for me. When they told me to repent from yoga, something that was helpful, I found helpful, that was dedicated to Christ at the very beginning of the woman's book. And the woman's practice was very gentle. There was no omen to the devil, none of that. They were telling me that I was going to hell for that. I was thinking, I don't think so. There's nothing there that you would. So I went on or was reading through this booklet on confessing your sins. And they wanted you to confess to things like baptizing or being baptized in urine for the devil. And all this I'm just going to say, it's just a really weird out there stuff that they were trying to make people confess to. And many things that had nothing to do with the devil, like karate. That was another one up there with yoga. You had to confess that you had done karate and you were now sorry you had, and you're asking God's forgiveness. The whole 4-page booklet was like really intense, and or maybe it was 8 pages. It's this little, I kind of look at it, it was like yellow and purple, I remember. And one of the things they wanted you to do was confess all your sins towards your partner. That is one of the hardest things in the world to do. And it's a stupid thing because your partner knows where you fall down and fail. And you know where they fall down and fail. And if you have any kind of a decent marriage, you just kind of, that's just what they do. And you don't take offense at those things. I have just learned that after too many years of him doing various things. Yeah, it does sound bad shit, doesn't it, Prairie? I just went to one of these churches that was the same sort of crazy thing. They were, where did this happen? This happened at my church that no longer exists. And I used to go to a church. I guess the cat's out of the bag. I can go ahead and say it because the church is gone now. Raccoon Ford Christian Fellowship in Virginia. They were part of Grace Community Church and Grace Community's little network presbytery of churches. This is still a Grace Community in Fredericksburg that the pastor moved over to. And there's still a Grace Community in, I think it's Harrisonburg. It's still there. And they have a school there too. And so this is a church that was part of that. And this is the stuff they were teaching. I wish I could remember the name of the teacher, but he had their book, and then we were going through the 8-page workbook. going through and confessing that we had done yoga. And that was really, you've been teaching yoga all that time, Dina? Oh, wow. That is crazy. I haven't taught it, but I have done it enough times. I still sometimes do it. Right before I left my Virginia town for a couple of years, I was doing water yoga, and I really like that because I have no balance. That's something I've had for years where my balance was kind of suspicious. Now I have no balance. It's walking around all the time with this thing, with my cane, so I don't fall down because I have no balance. And yoga is very helpful. Doing it in the water even has been very helpful to me. A lot of Christians in the state of Alabama hate it. Dina, I am not surprised. Um, when I was at that church, I had a really close friend named Joni. Joni was outgoing. Joni was wonderful. Joni is still wonderful, except when she nags me about coming back to her version of church. She and I would do all kinds of fun things together, and we would do all kinds of ministry things together. The big thing that we used to do was we would get together and we would go on, gotta think what morning was that? Wednesday morning. First, we would go to the senior nutrition site where the seniors were. And it was her idea just to pray for these people, to pray for them and see that they're healed for various things and stuff. We did that for a few hours. That was well and good. We met a lot of wonderful people. And then we would go over to the soup kitchen down the street from there. And again, it was her idea that we were going to pray for people. We did do a little praying, but it was a whole lot of getting to know people and getting to know where they were in their lives and their needs and that sort of thing. And that was awesome. But I remember in the middle of all of this, she turned to me one time and said, "Can you imagine bringing any of these people to Raccoon Forward Christian Fellowship, RFCF?" Says, "Can you imagine what would happen if we did? Can you imagine how so-and-so would fall out? Can you imagine how so-and-so would not want to sit next to him?" And we had this long conversation, and basically we came to the conclusion that anybody that wasn't the right kind of white Christian, not dressed a certain way, was going to be not welcome. Which is really a shame, because if you look at the words of Jesus, everybody is pretty much welcome. I mean, Jesus hung around with tax collectors, with guys who had bad reputations, with prostitutes. He was not a respecter of persons as far as saying, I have to hang out with the most religious people ever. And that's really sad that the churches have really turned into that. Yeah, heaven is not a gated community. There is a Christian artist that I do like called Jason Upton. He does kind of out there music. One of his songs that makes me laugh, cry at the same time is called, I think it's Prayer for a Civilized Society, for Civilized Sacred Society. It's something like that. It's basically them singing about how happy they are in Jesus and being in their little gated community where there's no strife, there's no poverty, there's no problems. They're safe in their panic rooms. And I think that's a lot of where Christianity is now. And I gotta say, I don't appreciate fear pastors. If you're gonna get up there and you're gonna preach a sermon about the love of Jesus, that's one thing. If you're gonna get up there like today and say, "Oh my God, you're all going to hell unless you do X, Y, and Z." And I was already triggered because they had YWAM in there, Youth with a Mission. If you don't know who those are, YWAM was there leading worship. And our regular worship team was not up there. I wasn't up there either. So, and I have been part of worship team off and on for a long, long time. So they were all up there, well-scrubbed youth. And one girl, I just had to keep staring at her. She was dressed exactly like the Duggar girls. The knee length, just below the knee, denim skirt, and the loose t-shirt, and the flip-flops. Same. I call that the Duggar uniform. And whenever I see those particular skirts, I start getting super triggered. And it's a shame because I used to love my denim skirts. I could no longer wear them because of that. I got burned out of that where we were at Raccoon Forge, where everybody was wearing denim jumpers, they were wearing denim dresses, they're wearing denim skirts. Said my favorite churches are the deep woods ones. I stopped going, but there's one in a very small town in the middle of Florida that's mostly farming community that were all nice. That's really where a lot of them are. That's there are smaller churches that are just absolutely precious and darling. The church I go to here in Tamarindo, there's been a lot of infighting. The pastor left. There's been a lot of crazy things that have gone on behind the scenes that aren't obvious. And it's interesting because the church is trying to put itself back together. I'm not convinced that it will ever happen because they keep bringing in all these different pastors from all over, and we're getting these crazy messages. This message today about looking at your own sin. It's all well and good, but where was the forgiveness of the healing or any of that? There was nothing. He cut it off just at that. It's supposed to explain next week. I'm not sure I can sit through it next week because I am one of those fidgety people who doesn't do well at church unless I have something in my hands to manipulate. I don't hear the sermon. I know that sounds crazy, but if my hands are working on something, I'm fine. I hear every word and I take it in. If I'm having to sit there like this, I don't take in a word. My mind goes all over the place. Yeah, YWAM. They really worship YWAM in some of these Baptist churches and in independent fundamentalist Baptists. YWAM they got their own problems. My problem with YWAM and a lot of the mission organizations is like this group. They were here for a while. I don't know what they were doing. If you want to ask me what they were doing, I couldn't tell you. They led worship 3 times in our church to give our poor worship leader a break that she desperately needed. But I can't tell you. I ran into them all. I ran into the YWAM crowd this afternoon at the grocery store when I went to get hot dog buns. They were buying chips for the beach. And I've observed that since I've been here in Costa Rica. There are a lot of these mission organizations that will send teams here, teams of teens for missionary work. We're darn close to a first world country here. A lot of times, the only things they can do are simple things like they said they were going to come here and teach sewing classes. I kind of laughed and raised my eyebrows at that one because A, it's hard to get supplies of any sort here for sewing. You get at least an hour's drive. And B, nobody does that anymore. It's turned into a dying art. Some of the things they've talked about they're coming here to teach are not really things that are really needed. Now, a lot of times they'll come here and they'll do that sort of thing. Another biggie is they'll do some kind of environmental project or they'll put in cement sidewalks or whatever. Usually what happens is they're here doing their mission work for half the day, and then the other half of the day, they're on the beach, they're in the coffee shop, they're on the computer. It is sort of a poverty tourism. You too, fat chicken, is not fun. I have to have something in my hands, be it crocheting or video games or something, or I just cannot. Disconnected. Definitely disconnected from the culture. There's a big group coming down from Detroit next week. My husband's excited. Oh, excuse me, not Detroit. They're coming down from another Michigan city, another big one. I can't remember exactly which one. I want to say Grand Rapids, but I know that's not it. Anyway, they're coming. And like I said, they're going to be teaching all these different skills that are really what I would call dying skills that aren't really even very useful anymore in today's society. Better off to teach how to do coding, how to do IT work than this. But it's a mission-cation. People do that, and they love to send their teens to do that. The only thing I can say about the goodness of it is at least it gets them out of America. They get to see how the other half lives. I would like to see more mission trips to places like Nicaragua. The poverty there is horrible. I would like to see people show up with enough money and supplies to actually do some good. Um, Christians can't code. That would make a good t-shirt, actually. That's pretty funny, but pretty true. Christians probably can't code. I know a couple who can. So I'm curious to see how this goes. My husband, he welcomes his people with open arms. I'm kind of like, because I know darn good and well we're in a second world country. We're in the Gold Coast. We're the richest part of the entire country. And still they come here like it needs, like mission trips are necessary. They're not. Now, why they're not going to the Central Valley of Costa Rica, where there are large indigenous tribes people that do need help in every way. They need medical help. They need supplies for food, all sorts of things. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see them go into Nicaragua, where the poverty is the worst. That's true. That's the problem. You know, it's something that I've thought about here that needs to happen very badly. And it does not need to be church connected, I don't think. I think that connecting it to a church would be a disaster. I thought about it. I mean, even my little Virginia community had a women's shelter for battered women. Here, there's nothing. There are maybe a few places for Costa Ricans that speak Spanish, but there's nothing for women. And there are a lot of American women. There are a lot of American women here have been abused. I've heard of 6 different cases in the last year where they had nowhere to go. And I'm thinking the time has come here to start some type of shelter for American women who are trapped here, because it's a very common thing for a man to bring his wife, girlfriend, whatever, to someplace overseas and then just completely isolate them. I had a very close friend that her husband did that to her, brought her here, and it damn near killed her. They ended up divorcing. But she had times where she had nowhere to go. And I didn't even know. If I had known, I would have said, my guest house, you can move in as long as you want. Wall's 12 feet high. We're just going to ignore if he comes knocking. We're not letting him in. He's not climbing that wall. Oh, that's true. That's true. They might. Yeah, I don't want to see a Christian version of Doctors Without Borders. I remember the case in Uganda because the person that did that was from Virginia. And it was somebody in an organization that I was familiar with from my time in Virginia with my old church. So there is that. That's the problem. If they're not qualified, they should not be doctoring. It's one thing to, put bandages on scrapes and cuts. It's a whole different ball game to reset a broken bone, put stitches in, any of that. Now, some of that I've done with animals. I've done with animals in my shelter work through the years. But I wouldn't want to have to set a broken bone on a human being or stitch them up or give them vaccinations. That's just not my comfort level is not there. And I know a lot of Americans are. And so that's really what I think should happen. They really need, they would refuse to treat gay people. That would be another problem with the Independent Fundamentalist Baptists being involved in anything like that. And especially the Independent Fundamentalist Baptists, but Baptists, Episcopal, Catholic, practically any religion that you can think of that was involved with the troubled teen residential treatment centers was warehousing those kids, abusing them, to them, doing SA to them, doing the trafficking with them, all of that. They're all accused of that stuff. And there's significant evidence that this stuff has gone down at these places for many, many years, leaving a huge trail of victims behind that they have yet to apologize to or address. That could be. You might be right. That chick said, in my humble opinion, mission trips are the only way most evangelicals can justify taking a vacation. They're so indoctrinated with working for the Lord that the idea of taking any time for themselves seems wrong. That's exactly right. And plus, you get these young teenagers, 13, 14, 15 years old, and they want to do something useful. And they've been pushed with mission trip. And I got to say, I am a mission trip hypocrite. I sent my daughter when she was like 14 years old. She went to Romania for a month or 6 weeks. It was a long length of time, and it was quite expensive. She went with Global Expeditions, who are no longer doing it. They've lost their facility in Texas, and they're no longer funding all these trips like they were before. Actually, they don't fund it. You're raising about twice what you would need to raise if you were just to simply take a vacation to that place. I think we were paying $6,000 or $7,000 for her to go to Romania and walk the streets and witness to people and sing songs. Um, the other one she went to was way different, but it was they had hooked up with Jesus People, I think was the name of the other organization in Europe. They were in Poland and Germany. They were in Germany during World Cup. They were in Bavaria and Munich, and it turned out to be an incredibly positive experience for my daughter. But at the same time, I think she would have been just as well served if I'd have just taken half that money and sent her on a vacation to see all these places, because while there was a lot of free time and they did see a lot of things, they missed a lot of stuff. And again, it was all going around glad handing out tracts, talking to people, shaking hands, singing songs, doing skits in the park. It was all that sort of thing. They weren't doing anything what I would call useful. They were doing that sort of thing. The only thing they did that was really useful, I thought, was they went into the Romanian orphanages in that first trip. And my daughter got to see how the other half lives. She got to see what it was like for those Romanian kids her age that had been warehoused in the orphanages because Romania had a one-child policy. So, and most people could not afford to even raise the one child. So they were abandoning their children left and right to the orphanages. That's the only good thing. I've always said I'd like to take all the spoiled teens in suburbia and take them someplace like Romania or Haiti or Nicaragua, El Salvador, and drop them off with, with just a little bit of safety and help, and see them make their own way and figure out what to do there, because those are some very poor, very, very poor areas. I'd like to see them do real things to help. Yeah, abortion was banned. Abortion was banned, and they had a one-child policy. So since you couldn't get abortions and you only could have one child, and most people couldn't even support that lone child, it meant that the orphanages were full to busting. And she was right in the right age group with those kids and got to see firsthand what that was like. Incredible numbers ran away from the Romanian orphanages when they turned into teenagers. And that was a problem of large groups of kids on the streets. There was a huge gypsy population. There's been a huge explosion in the gypsy population just about in every major European city now. I understand there are big groups of gypsies, and kids have run away from orphanages in different places. There's a lot of kids that run away once they get old enough from the Romanian orphanages because it's just so much overcrowding and nothing. Yeah, so there's that. There's that. So there aren't that many organizations, I think, that really do the kind of outreach mission that you would need to do to reach those kids, not to proselytize to them and turn them into Christians, but maybe just to give them a place to stay and something to eat, push them to school, that sort of thing. And I hold that directly at the feet of these mission organizations with their mission-cations. He was very, very nuts. When my daughter went, they were still trying to even sort out what kind of money they had. At one point, they didn't have any change in any of the stores. So you would go buy something in Romania and they would give you little erasers and things as change, which I thought was interesting. Little erasers or candy. I think now they've sorted out their money situation. I can't remember if they actually went on the euro or not. But there was some talk of that when she was there, so I don't doubt that they're on the euro now. And they were trying to modernize. Everything she said pointed to that. She talked about staying at the school where there were bullet holes all in the walls. There'd obviously been all kinds of fighting and various things. There's a book, the most poorly written, ridiculous true story, written by a Romanian orphan who lives in Virginia Beach, who has a ministry now. And I can't even remember what the name of it is. But I used to know him because he would pop up at NLQ every now and then and beg me to promote his book. And I'd say, well, have you gone back and edited it? No. So I'm not promoting your book because it's really poorly written. I mean, you should have used an editor. Shoot, I volunteered to edit it for him. But at one point, it was a whole bunch of orphans who'd run away from the orphanage, and they were living under the street in the sewers, according to him. His wife came over on one of those mission-cations. He met her then. They were both teenagers. He went back with her to Virginia Beach and married her. She was from a very fundamentalist religious family, and they basically took him in. And once I remember what that book is, I'm going to put the links in the description, because it is interesting. And you can, I think it was for free on Kindle Unlimited. I think it was. He's changed the name of the book 2 or 3 times, so there's no telling. So I'm going to go look for that and put it in the comments if I can, well, in the description if I can find it. And I'm rambling. I came on here to talk only about the Baptist, and here I am. I'm rambling all over the place, talking about mission-cations and all that. And we do see a lot of mission kids here, a whole lot. And like I said, I would prefer to send them north of us to Nicaragua. The first time I went to Nicaragua, I was just blown away by the poverty. I mean, we're talking third world poverty like I've seen in Haiti. It's just bad. What's happened since is even worse. When I was there were a lot of Americans there. We went to San Juan del Sur, and it was beautiful. We stayed at a resort. It was almost nothing. This beautiful resort right on the ocean. We stayed there. It was very reasonably priced. That's a whole nother story, because that's a crazy story how we ended up going there. We had to ford a river and all kinds of crazy stuff happened. So we stayed at this beautiful, beautiful villa, and I ran into Americans there. They were selling American lots and American houses very cheaply. I told my husband, it's like, maybe we ought to buy a lot up on that mountain overlooking San Juan del Sur, the beach, because they were selling lots, cleared lots, ready to build, all utilities, $8,000. But what happened in April after we first moved here, that was in July. Well, in April, the next April, there was problems. The military started flexing their muscle. All the Americans got out because it started to be violence. The military straight out murdered a pile of university students for not cooperating with them. So it became a do not travel spot for Americans. I mean, it's on the State Department website, even though every time I fly back to Costa Rica, I always run into Americans that are flying to Liberia to get up to Nicaragua, to go to San Juan del Sur to surf, because it is a prime surfing location. They have no idea about the violence. They have no idea that it's actually considered a do not travel spot. But since all this has gone down, instead of just being poor people, now people are trying to sell family antiques for pennies on the dollar. I've had friends traveling through and telling me that people are begging them for money. They're begging them to buy these priceless antiques from them for 50 cents or whatever, so they can feed their families. It's really gotten that bad there. And I don't know what it's going to take to make that like it used to be. I'm longing to go back. Something that doers need to just be discussed. Yeah, they need to. And the church we're at now has a regular place they go to in Nicaragua, and they do all kinds of work. Some of the pictures are heartbreaking that I've seen. One lady, they built her a house because her house was basically built out of flattened tin cans and wood salvaged from pallets. You see a lot of that there. when you get off into the countryside, especially. Just incredibly grinding poverty. Okay, now I'm a downer. I'm a big downer. Debbie Downer talking about all the unfun things about going. Yeah, make sure Reagan never happened. Reagan really screwed the place up. And right now it is a Sandinista, what's left of the Sandinistas have taken over. When COVID first happened, the president of Nicaragua got COVID and ended up going to Costa Rica for treatment. Nicaragua does not count their COVID cases. They don't count them, they don't treat them, they don't vaccinate them. And so I'm hearing that it's been really rough there. I've seen some crazy photos of some of the piles of bodies, and hope that was pulling my leg, but I don't think it is. So anyway, this Debbie Downer is going to go. I'm losing my voice, no matter how much Diet Coke I have. So I'm going to go. Like I said, if she starts talking about all Baptists do this, that's a bunch of hooey. Baptists will do what Baptists will do, whatever their particular little flavor says to do. Like I said, like packets of Kool-Aid or types of sodas. There are all kinds of Baptists too. Y'all have a great day.